Welcome, gentle listener, to a world shaped by sand and water, sun and shade. A world where the Nile flows like a blue ribbon through time itself. Tonight, we journey together into ancient Egypt's golden age. Here, beneath the gaze of timeless gods and the watchful eyes of the pharaohs, thousands of ordinary lives unfolded in patterns as steady as the river's gentle current. Let your mind drift back nearly 3,500 years. The air is warm and dry. The scent of fresh bread and lotus flowers mingles with dust carried from distant deserts. It is an era of pyramids, of priests and artisans, of bustling marketplaces and fields glistening with dew. This land is filled with astonishing achievements, but also shadows. Its beauty is balanced with hardship, and behind the grandeur lies a complex web of real human struggles. As the night deepens and your breath slows, let us gently walk through a single ordinary day on the banks of the Nile. We will move from sunlit dawns to torchlit evenings, exploring not just the wonders but the truths, both bright and dark, of ancient Egyptian life. Let us begin our journey. The day begins before the sun has touched the land. In the cool pre-dawn quiet, the Nile gleams softly in the starlight, the lifeblood of Egypt, winding endlessly north. Along its banks, a faint breeze stirs reeds and palm fronds. The world holds its breath for a moment, as if pausing between night and the day's awakening. A small fishing village rests beside the water. Its mud brick houses are clustered close, walls washed white with crushed limestone, a practice both practical and spiritual, for white is the color of purity and protection. Within these simple homes, families begin to stir. Women rise first, wrapping linen shawls around their shoulders, stepping into the gentle hush of dawn. Already, the oldest daughter kneels by a small hearth, coaxing embers to life with careful breaths. She adds dried dung and straw, a pungent smoke curling into the cool air. In many homes, fuel is scarce. Wood is precious, carried by boat from faraway lands, so families rely on what the cattle provide. This is not a detail sung in the hymns to the gods or etched onto tomb walls, but it is as real as any monument. The smells of earth, river, and burning dung blend together. A scent so ancient, it could lull even the restless to sleep. With practiced hands, she shapes dough into small loaves and sets them near the coals. Bread, aish, is the food of life. Its making is a quiet ritual, repeated thousands of times in every home along the river. As she works, her mind wanders to the coming tasks, grinding grain, fetching water, tending goats, perhaps weaving a new reed mat if there is time. In the distance, a low horn sounds. It is the call for the field workers to gather. The men, young and old, tie simple loincloths or kilts. Some wear amulets around their necks, small charms for protection, carved from bone or faience. Their skin is tanned by years beneath the sun, their hands rough from harvests and floods. Some will walk to the fields, ready to cut papyrus, plant barley, or tend the canals. Others will join gangs of laborers, those who help build the temples and tombs. For the poorest, work is unending. For the lucky, there is steady food and occasional rest. Hunger is a silent companion in the lives of many, especially when the Nile's annual flood does not come as expected. Starvation and sickness are quiet threats, never fully banished, even in a land so bountiful. As the sun rises, the sky shifts from deep indigo to a pale, blossoming gold. Light ripples across the water, waking flocks of ibises and herons. In the village, Morning becomes a tapestry of activity, the quiet murmur of voices, the clatter of pottery, and the soft music of reed flutes played by children on their way to chores. Breakfast is simple. Bread, sometimes with onions, dates, or a little honey if fortune allows. On special days, fish is salted or dried the night before, saved for the morning meal. Most families eat seated on woven mats, sharing what they have. Hunger, though common, is born with quiet dignity. There is little waste, and even crumbs are swept for chickens and goats. Nearby, a temple looms over the landscape, its walls painted with bright scenes, gods with animal heads, pharaohs offering gifts. The priests are among the first to rise, performing daily rituals meant to awaken the gods themselves. Candles are lit, incense curls in sacred air, and chants echo through the stone halls. To the ancient Egyptians, the divine is present in every corner of life. The breeze is the breath of Shu, the sunrise a promise from Ra. For the ordinary villager, faith is woven into daily action. Small prayers spoken before leaving the house, amulets touched for luck, or simple gestures of thanks for a safe night. Not all, however, live in the comforts of family. Along the riverbank, near the reed marshes, a group of children gather with baskets. These are orphans or the very poor, some the children of workers lost to accident or sickness, others abandoned in harsh times. They learn early to help each other survive, gathering eggs from the reeds, hunting frogs, or weaving small mats to trade for bread. In Egypt's golden age, as in all times, not every life is gilded. Disease and injury are frequent visitors. Malaria from mosquitoes, infections from small wounds, dangers from crocodiles or hippos in the river. Life and death are interwoven, as they are in all places and all ages. As the heat grows, families scatter to their day's work. The Nile Valley is green and lush compared to the world beyond its banks, a fact never taken for granted. Canals crisscross the land, carrying life-giving water to wheat, barley, onions, flax, and groves of date palms. Farmers bend in the fields, bare feet sunk into the cool mud. Some sing to keep rhythm as they work, their voices rising above the croak of frogs and the hum of insects. Work is both routine and sacred. The annual flooding of the Nile, known as the inundation, is both feared and celebrated. When the waters rise, land disappears beneath churning brown silt. When they recede, the soil is rich and ready. Sometimes, though, the river brings too little or too much, and famine follows. In those years, the pharaoh's duty is to feed the hungry. Grain stored in state granaries is distributed, but not always enough to prevent suffering. For the men conscripted to labor on state projects, temple building, tomb digging, or carrying stone, life is harder still. They gather in work gangs under the watchful eyes of overseers. The pay is meager: bread, beer, onions, sometimes fish or meat on festival days. Injuries are frequent: a slipped tool, a falling stone, a sunstroke. Workers may receive medical care. Egyptian doctors are famed for their skill. But not all survive. Slavery exists, though it is different from later forms. Prisoners of war or debtors may labor in fields or quarries. Some, captured in distant campaigns, never see home again. Yet, within the villages, most people are free. Their lives ruled not by chains, but by the unending demands of land and harvest. Just beyond the fields, closer to the heart of the city, artisans ply their trades. In small workshops, fathers teach sons the secrets of carpentry, pottery, jewelry making, and painting. Women spin linen thread, dyeing it with ochre or indigo, weaving it into cloth for market or home. Children learn early, their small hands nimble with reeds, clay, or beads of colored glass. Some of the greatest artistry is reserved for the tombs and temples of the wealthy. Teams of painters, stonemasons, and sculptors create images meant to last forever. Murals of hunting scenes, statues of gods, tiny Shabti figures to serve the dead in the afterlife. For every golden mask or jeweled necklace found in a king's tomb, there are thousands of ordinary objects: a wooden bowl, a painted doll, a simple reed basket, made with the same care. Yet, the work is not without risk. Dust from carving stone fills the lungs, paint pigments can poison, and accidents happen in deep, dark tombs. Life expectancy is short for many. Few live beyond 40. Still, pride in craftsmanship runs deep, and families pass their skills from generation to generation, each hoping their creations will outlive them. As the sun rises higher, its light turns sharp and dazzling, bouncing off whitewashed walls and the blue expanse of the Nile. The city stirs into fullness. Markets open beneath canvas awnings, their stalls heavy with pottery, linen, fresh vegetables, salted fish, and baskets of fragrant herbs, coriander, fenugreek, and mint. The scent of crushed garlic drifts from food vendors' stalls, mingling with sweat and dust. In the press of the crowd, voices rise in laughter and argument. This is the pulse of Egypt's daily life. Trade, barter, gossip, and news carried by boat and word of mouth. For many, midday is also a time of labor. The city's streets are busy with craftsmen, scribes, and merchants. Scribes, among the most respected in society, sit cross-legged in the shade, their reed pens and ink blocks close at hand. They keep records for temples, merchants, and the royal court. Wills, taxes, contracts, and poetry all pass beneath their steady hands. Literacy is rare and precious. Most people will never read their own names, yet their stories endure through those who write for them. Children run between stalls, some sent to fetch goods, others simply playing. Their laughter rises above the din, a reminder that even in a land shaped by ritual and tradition, there is space for simple joy. Still, not all children are carefree. Some labor beside their parents, learning trades or carrying water in clay jugs heavy for small arms. Others, especially the poorest, are sold into domestic service or apprenticed far from home, their childhoods brief and uncertain. Among the crowd, women move with purpose. Some manage stalls, others bargain for cloth, bread, or dried figs. Women in ancient Egypt enjoy more rights than in many ancient societies. Some own land, run businesses, or even serve as priestesses. Yet, beneath the surface, their lives are circumscribed by expectation. Marriage is nearly universal, and children, especially sons, are prized. Infertility is feared, sometimes blamed on spirits or ill fortune. And divorce, while possible, can leave women vulnerable. At the city's edge, less visible to visitors, are neighborhoods of the poor, laborers, migrants, and the sick. The ancient Egyptians built great monuments, but ordinary people lived in humble homes of mud brick, prone to flood, collapse, or fire. Disease is ever present. Tuberculosis, malaria, and parasitic infections shorten many lives. Medical care exists, but remedies are a blend of herbal wisdom, ritual, and trial and error. Yet, for all its hardships, life continues with surprising resilience. Communities care for the ill and elderly, often pooling resources to bury the dead with simple but heartfelt rites. Funerals are not only for kings. Even the poorest strive to provide bread, beer, and a shroud for those who pass. The hope of an afterlife, a field of reeds where hunger and thirst never return, gives comfort to many. Crime exists, though punishments are often harsh. Petty theft may mean lashes, mutilation, or exile. Justice is a concern for all. Those with means appeal to local magistrates or priests who hear disputes beneath the colonnades of the temple. Corruption is whispered about, but rarely challenged, for power is wielded by the few and respected by the many. By late afternoon, the heat is at its peak. Those who can rest in the shade of trees or cool interiors, their homes built to catch breezes off the river. Life slows. Laborers return from fields or construction, their skin and clothes streaked with sweat and dust. They wash in the Nile's waters, laughing and splashing, despite the ever-present risk of crocodiles lurking in the deeper currents. Washing is both practical and spiritual. The body is seen as sacred. Daily cleansing is part of religious and social life. Small altars stand in many homes, and a clean body is the mark of respect for both gods and neighbors. As the day's business winds down, families prepare for the evening meal. The main food, bread and beer, remains the same, but there are small delights. Fresh cheese, a roasted bird, or lentil stew. On festival days, the city comes alive with music, feasting and games. Children play senet, the ancient board game of chance and fate, while musicians perform with harps, lutes, and rattles. Dancers whirl in the dusk, their movements echoing the cycles of nature and the hope for another day's abundance. As the sun sinks low, the colors of Egypt grow rich and golden. The river reflects clouds of birds returning to roost. The city's shadows lengthen, cooling stones and softening edges. Homes fill with the smell of roasting garlic and simmering stews. The day's work fades, and for a moment, the world seems at peace. But darkness also brings uncertainty. The night is home to dangers, snakes, jackals, and unseen spirits that, in Egyptian belief, wander where lamps do not reach. Doors are bolted, amulets placed beside beds, prayers whispered for protection. The very young and the very old are watched closely. Sudden illness, fevers, and injuries are most feared after nightfall, when help is far away. Even so, the community gathers warmth and comfort. Grandparents tell stories by torchlight, reciting myths of Isis and Osiris, tales of clever animals and wise judges. These stories, passed down through generations, offer both entertainment and lessons, reminders of the power of kindness, caution, and cleverness in a world shaped by forces beyond human control. Some nights, when the moon is high, young men and women slip away from the watchful eyes of elders, meeting by the river's edge. They talk quietly, sharing hopes and fears, aware that their fates are written in the stars and the slow turning of the river. Even in a world shaped by ritual and order, the heart seeks its own path. As dusk descends, the land cools. The last light lingers on the pyramids, temples, and palms, while the river glows like burnished copper. The air carries the scent of jasmine and cooling earth. In the fields, workers walk home in small groups, voices hushed by tiredness and the shifting presence of night. Inside the homes, the routines of evening begin. Lamps of fired clay, filled with thick oil and a twisted flax wick, are lit, casting soft, trembling halos on the walls. Shadows move gently in the corners, familiar yet faintly unsettling, reminders of the world's mysteries. The family gathers for their final meal of the day, bread, stew, perhaps a sweet treat if a festival is near. They eat together in a circle, sharing not only food but laughter and quiet news, comforting themselves against the darkness just outside their door. For many, the night brings the rare luxury of rest. After the day's labors, bodies weary from sun and toil, sleep is both necessity and blessing. But not all sleep comes easily. In the narrow lanes and crowded courtyards, the poor and sick lie awake, their minds troubled by worries that have no answer. The threat of sudden illness or a hungry year ahead lingers at the edge of every dream. Some, meanwhile, are forbidden from rest. Guards and watchmen patrol the city's boundaries and temple precincts. Egypt is largely peaceful, but dangers, robbers, wild animals, fire are ever present. Even the sacred temples built to withstand time itself are not immune to theft and desecration. For the pharaoh and priests, security is a constant concern. Writings from the age tell of tomb robbers, desperate enough to risk severe punishment for a handful of gold or grain. The penalties for such crimes are harsh: amputation, exile, or even death. But still, hunger and greed sometimes win out over fear. As the household settles, children lie on mats of woven reeds, staring at the flickering shadows on the ceiling. Grandparents hum quiet lullabies, songs whose words are as old as the pyramids. The stories told tonight are not just for entertainment. They are guides for the soul. Tales of gods and goddesses who journey between life and death, of the just rewarded in the field of reeds, and the wicked judged by the feather of Ma'at. Dreams are deeply important to the people of Egypt. They believe the night opens a doorway to the spirit world, where the gods may send warnings, blessings, or glimpses of the future. Many keep small amulets or inscribe spells near their beds, hoping to protect their sleep or summon good visions. Some record their dreams on scraps of pottery or linen, taking them to the temple to seek the priest's interpretation. For the lonely or grieving, dreams offer visits from lost loved ones, a comfort against the uncertainties of mortal life. Yet nightmares are feared. The ancient Egyptians see bad dreams as signs of disorder, perhaps anger from a restless spirit or forgotten god. Special rituals and prayers are performed to ward off evil, and wise women known for their skill in magic are sometimes summoned to banish harmful spirits. The line between faith and fear is as thin as the mist that rises from the river at dawn. Though most Egyptians will never see their ruler, the pharaoh's presence is felt everywhere. Statues in the marketplace, carvings on every temple wall, and the officials who oversee work in the fields and workshops all remind the people that their lives are bound to the will of one who is both man and God. Taxes, labor conscription, and obedience to the laws set by the pharaoh's court shape the lives of every villager and city dweller. Yet the pharaoh is as vulnerable as anyone. Behind the symbols of eternal power lie fears, failed harvests, plague, invasion from foreign lands. Political intrigue is common in the royal court. Conspiracies sometimes end in exile or execution. Even the most famous pharaohs face moments of crisis, when the Nile fails to flood, when enemies threaten at the borders, or when the gods seem silent. Real power in Egypt's golden age is precarious. History remembers names and triumphs, but in the homes along the river, people remember famine, oppression, and the quiet heroism of survival. As the hours grow late, the city and countryside settle into silence. The river flows on, eternal and soothing. Far from the markets and temples, fishermen cast nets by moonlight, hoping for a good catch to feed their families. Others sleep on rooftops, enjoying the cool air and the glitter of distant stars. In these last moments before sleep, families talk quietly about the future, hopes for a son's apprenticeship, worries over the health of a grandparent, wishes for a good harvest. They have no illusions that life is easy, but they draw strength from each other and from the traditions that shape their world. The narrator's voice softens, inviting the listener to rest alongside these ancient dreamers. In the darkness, as in the light, the people of the Nile endure. Their days are filled with struggle and beauty, loss and laughter. Each sunrise brings another chance for kindness, for wonder, for a life carried gently by the river's song. Let your mind drift now, lulled by the quiet resilience of those who came before, and the knowledge that no matter how far we travel through time, the heartbeat of ordinary lives endures. At the edge of the city, beside the great white walls of the temple, sits Mena, a middle-aged scribe. His home is modest, shaded by the spreading leaves of a sycamore. Each morning before dawn, Mena prepares his tools, a box of reeds, a block of black and red pigment, and rolls of smooth papyrus. Though his work is respected, writing and keeping the city's records, prayers and contracts, Mena's life is not one of ease. His hands ache from years of careful writing, the joints swollen and sometimes stiff. Still, he rises with gratitude. In a land where most cannot read, his skills are rare. He feels the weight of this every day. As he walks through the city, he greets neighbors, offers a quiet word to children, and is stopped often for advice, a letter to compose, an account to check, a prayer to inscribe for a worried mother. Yet Mena knows the darkness behind the papyrus. He has recorded taxes for widows who could not pay, their grain taken by temple collectors. He has written decrees ordering families to send their sons to distant building sites. Sometimes, at night, he wakes with guilt, remembering the faces of those he could not help. Mena's wisdom is trusted, but his power is limited by the laws of kings and gods. Today, as the city wakes, Mena receives a visitor, a grieving woman, her husband lost to fever. She brings a scrap of linen, asks for a prayer for his journey to the afterlife. Mena's words are gentle, his calligraphy slow and careful. He lights a stick of incense, murmurs a blessing, and hands her the finished charm. The woman leaves, her sorrow eased just a little. Mena sits quietly for a moment, staring at the river, wondering how many stories are carried in its current, never to be written down. In the nearby fields, where the Nile's floodwaters have just receded, a young man named Hori moves through the mud. He is tall, his back strong from years of labor, and his eyes quick and cautious. Each day, Hori joins dozens of others in tending the crops: barley, wheat, onions and beans. The work is backbreaking and unending. His hands are thick with calluses, his feet cracked from long hours under the burning sun. Hori's family lives in a tiny house on the village edge. His wife, a baby son, and his elderly mother. Every mouthful of bread depends on the river's gift and his sweat. Years when the flood is generous, the family feasts. When it is poor, hunger gnaws quietly at night, a constant fear among those who work the land. Despite this, Hori finds pride in his labor. He sings as he bends to plant seeds, the melodies learned from his father's father. He knows the names of every bird that nests in the reeds, the signs of weather, the secrets of the soil. To the city folk, the field workers are almost invisible, yet without them, the granaries would be empty, and even the pharaoh would starve. Today, as Hori works, he sees a crocodile sunning on the opposite bank, a reminder of ever-present danger. His brother was taken by one 2 years ago, a grief still fresh, but there is no time to mourn during the harvest. When the work is done, Hori returns home, washing in the cool river, cradling his son, and eating a small meal beneath the silent gaze of the stars. In a cluttered workshop, sunlight streaming through a narrow window, sits Tia, a skilled potter and mother of 3. Her fingers are stained with ochre and clay, her hair tied back with a faded strip of linen. Tia's day is a dance of creation, shaping vessels from river mud, painting them with animals and swirling patterns, firing them in a kiln behind her house. Her pots will be traded at market, carried upriver, and perhaps one day placed with a noble in the tomb. Tia's skill brings small but steady income, yet her life is far from easy. The kiln sometimes cracks, spoiling a week's work. Rival artisans vie for customers, and the city's officials demand ever higher taxes for the right to sell at market. Tia's husband died 5 years ago, crushed in a construction accident, leaving her to raise their children alone. Her eldest daughter helps with chores. Her youngest, barely old enough to walk, sits by her side molding small animals from discarded scraps of clay. For Tia, artistry is survival. She finds solace in the act of creation, the satisfaction of a perfect curve, the way the painted glazes gleam in firelight. But there is anxiety too, the fear of illness, of drought, of a single misstep that could mean ruin for her family. Still, every morning, she greets the sun with hope and begins anew. As the day unfolds, the lives of Mena, Hori, and Tia brush against one another, their stories gently entwined. At midday, Mena passes Tia's stall in the market, pausing to admire her new jars, delicate and strong, adorned with lotus flowers and leaping fish. He asks after her family, purchases a small cup for his own table, and offers a blessing for her children. Later, Hori, finishing his shift in the fields, stops at the market for bread. He too sees Tia, trading a handful of onions for one of her sturdy pots. They exchange a brief word about the weather, share a smile, and move on. The brief connection, a comfort in a world often ruled by uncertainty. In the afternoon, Mena visits the temple to deliver records to the priests. He pauses at a courtyard where the poor gathered to receive leftover bread and beer distributed by the temple's charity. Among them is Hori's elderly mother, her hands shaking as she accepts her ration. Mena recognizes her and discreetly adds a fig from his own bag to her bowl, a small kindness, unrecorded in any official scroll. As night falls, each returns home surrounded by family or, in Tia's case, the quiet warmth of her children. Mena writes in his private scroll, reflections on the day, hopes for his son's future, worries for his ailing wife. Hori sits with his mother, sharing bread and stories, giving thanks for a safe day and praying for another. Tia tucks her daughters into bed, her hands aching, her mind already planning tomorrow's work. Their struggles are real: poverty, loss, fear, and the weight of fate. Yet there is also resilience, a refusal to surrender to despair, a quiet pride in what can be built with tired hands and a gentle heart. Through their eyes, we see ancient Egypt not as a land of only pharaohs and monuments, but as a living, breathing world of ordinary people, each one carrying hope like a lamp through the darkness. As evening approaches, Mena the scribe finds himself summoned to the temple by a city official. There is a dispute. A merchant accuses a farmer of failing to repay a loan, while the farmer pleads that a poor flood ruined his crops. The law is clear, yet the human cost troubles Mena. He sits at a small table, ink brush in hand, as the official listens impatiently. Mena gently records their statements, glancing up at the weary faces before him. The merchant is not cruel, only desperate. His own debts are mounting. The farmer is proud, ashamed to beg, but faces hunger if his land is seized. Mena knows that no words he writes can bring rain or turn silt into grain, but he takes care to document every detail, hoping the priests will find a way to show mercy. Later, as Mena walks home, he stops by the river's edge. He listens to the quiet rush of water, the distant calls of night birds. In the fading light, he wonders, how many lives are shaped by what he writes? How many suffer? How many are saved by the pen's gentle scratch? His work gives him standing, but not peace. Yet, in his careful fairness, in every act of listening, Mena plants small seeds of justice that may one day grow. In the deepening twilight, Hori checks the water level of the canal that feeds his village's fields. The levees, made from packed mud and reeds, must be watched constantly. One breach could mean disaster. Tonight, a neighbor's child, barefoot and curious, wanders too close and slips into the fast-moving water. Hori, quick as a reed shaken by the wind, leaps in and hauls the child to safety. Both emerge soaked, shivering, but alive. The villagers gather, relief and gratitude mingling in their voices. They know the river gives life, but can take it away in an instant. Later, Hori walks the child home, comforting the frightened mother. He stays to help reinforce the canal walls, working by moonlight. Such moments are rarely recorded in history's grand tales, yet they echo with quiet heroism. Back at his own home, Hori holds his son close. The memory of his lost brother haunts him, a warning and a lesson. Hori's devotion to family and community shapes each decision, every risk taken for others. This is his power, his gift, not strength alone, but the willingness to act, even when no one is watching. As the new moon rises, the city prepares for a festival in honor of Bastet, the cat-headed goddess of home, fertility, and joy. Streets are swept clean. Homes are decorated with garlands of pyrus and lotus, and children paint their faces with ochre and coal. It is a time of laughter, music, and hope. Mena, Hori, and Tia each attend in their own way. Mena as a guest of the priests, recording prayers and distributing charity. Hori with his family, enjoying sweet cakes and the rare treat of roasted fish. Tia with her daughters, watching dancers in the square and listening to stories told by traveling singers. For a few precious hours, worries are set aside. Even the city's poorest are given bread and beer, and the laughter of children fills the night air. The festival is a reminder. Joy can coexist with hardship, and even the most ordinary lives are touched by the sacred. As the festival ends and daily routines return, our three figures face new challenges: a failed crop, a bout of illness, the loss of a friend, but each finds resilience in small victories. Mena helps a young apprentice learn his letters, passing on his knowledge. Hori, though tired and often hungry, finds pride in his son's first spoken word. Tia, despite setbacks, creates a beautiful new vessel, admired by all at market. Through every hardship, there is a sense of continuity, of belonging to something greater than oneself. The Nile flows on, as it always has. Families gather, neighbors help neighbors, and the rhythm of life continues, fragile, imperfect, but enduring. The narrator closes this segment gently, inviting the viewer to reflect. In every age, in every land, ordinary people shape history not through monuments, but through small acts of kindness, resilience, and hope. The ancient Egyptians, for all their grand temples and pharaohs, are remembered also for the quiet courage of Mena, Hori, Tia, and countless others. Lives lived with dignity beneath the endless sky. As night settles along the Nile, the world seems smaller, just river, stars, and the quiet breath of sleepers. Yet beyond each home and field lies a web of connections, stretching across centuries, deserts, and distant lands. In this segment, our narrator gently lifts the curtain to reveal the larger patterns shaping every life along Egypt's riverbanks. For as long as memory, Egypt's story has been written in water. The Nile is a miracle in a world of sand, a river that rises and falls with the seasons, turning desert into fields, sustaining millions. Its floodwaters bring both hope and anxiety. When the flood is generous, fields overflow with barley and wheat, granaries are filled, and feasts are held in every village. But when the river runs low, the consequences are swift and harsh. Records carved in stone and written on scraps of papyrus tell of years when hunger gnawed at the land. Drought could turn green valleys to dust, and famine might send families fleeing, searching for food. Even in the Golden Age, when pyramids reached for the sky and cities thrived, disaster was never far away. The government stored grain in state granaries, distributed to the hungry during lean years. But even the best plans sometimes fell short. The Nile was not just a source of life, but also a boundary. It linked villages and cities, but the desert beyond was a land of danger, bandits, wild animals, and wandering spirits. Yet the river was also a highway carrying goods, ideas, and travelers. Boats moved up and down the water, loaded with limestone for building, gold from Nubia, cedar from distant Lebanon, and treasures from as far away as the Aegean. Egypt's rulers, pharaohs, viziers, priests, built their power on a promise: to keep the world in balance, to ensure Ma'at, the order that kept chaos at bay. This meant rituals, laws, taxes, and monuments, all intended to connect the earthly realm to the divine. Pharaohs were believed to be gods in human form, responsible for the prosperity of the whole land. When the Nile flooded poorly or disaster struck, blame might fall on the king or his officials. Periods of famine, plague, or foreign invasion sometimes ended dynasties, leading to chaos, civil war, or the rise of new rulers. But this system, built to endure, was never perfect. Corruption flourished in the shadows. Officials who took bribes, scribes who twisted records, priests who hoarded wealth. Injustice was a constant threat, especially for the poor. And though Egypt was powerful, enemies always lingered at its borders. Desert tribes, ambitious kings from Nubia, and later, empires from the east. Still, for centuries, Egypt endured, its social structure shaped by tradition and necessity. There was room for movement, even for women. A clever scribe might rise to official status, an artisan could become wealthy, and some women held power as business owners or even pharaohs. But such stories were rare. Most lives followed the well-worn paths of parents and grandparents. Religion was the heart of Egypt's world. Every home, city, and field was watched by gods and spirits: Osiris, Isis, Anubis, Hathor, Ra. Life was filled with ritual: morning prayers, offerings at the temple, the careful care of the dead. To the Egyptians, The afterlife was a mirror of the best parts of the world. Green fields, flowing water, and peace without end. Death, though ever present, was not the end, but a journey. Families saved for years to pay for tombs, amulets, and funerary rites, hoping to secure a place in the field of reeds. Mummification was practiced not only for pharaohs, but also for anyone who could afford it, though the poor might settle for a shroud and a simple grave. The process of dying was both sacred and practical. Rituals guided the soul through the afterlife, while the living remembered their dead with food, offerings, and prayers. Sometimes the line between worlds blurred, dreams, visions, or omens sent by spirits or gods. Illness, disaster, or bad luck were often seen as signs of imbalance, requiring the wisdom of priests or magicians to set things right. Despite this, the Egyptians could be pragmatic. Medical texts, preserved on papyrus, show an understanding of anatomy and healing. Wounds were cleaned with honey, herbs were prescribed for fevers, and surgeons performed complex procedures. Yet magic, faith, and science were woven together, each reinforcing the other, shaping a worldview where everything was connected. The monuments that survive, pyramids, temples, statues, tell only part of the story. Most Egyptians lived and died in homes of mud brick, their names long lost to time. Yet the pyramids and tombs, built by thousands of anonymous workers, stand as silent witnesses to human ambition and skill. Why did they build such wonders? For glory, faith, and the promise of eternity. The construction of a single pyramid spanned decades, requiring planning, labor, sacrifice, and ingenuity. Workers organized into crews, fed and clothed by the state, their efforts directed by master architects and overseers. Injuries and deaths were common. Even today, many details are still debated. How were the stones moved, the angles calculated, the monuments aligned with stars? Egypt's golden age was not without darkness. Slavery existed, though most forced laborers were prisoners of war or debtors. Women and children were sometimes pressed into service. At the same time, evidence shows that some workers were respected, well-fed, and even honored with graves near the pyramids, a complexity often lost in simple tales of oppression or grandeur. As centuries passed, Egypt faced waves of change, new rulers, new gods, new technologies. Yet the essentials endured. The Nile's cycle, the rhythms of daily life, the hope for meaning beyond the present. The knowledge and stories of this era influenced lands far beyond its borders, shaping the ancient Mediterranean world and leaving mysteries still unraveled. As the narrator's voice softens, we return to the quiet riverbank, the city at rest, and the stars above. What do we remember of a civilization so ancient? The stories of rulers and monuments endure, but perhaps more powerful are the echoes of ordinary lives. Mena the scribe, Hori the field worker, Tyr the potter, and countless others whose hands shaped a world we still strive to understand. Egypt's golden age offers lessons in resilience, adaptation, and the dangers of pride. It reminds us that even the greatest societies are fragile, dependent on nature, vulnerable to injustice, always searching for balance between order and chaos. Yet, from darkness and uncertainty grew art, faith, and wisdom that continue to inspire. The mysteries of the pyramids, the poetry of hieroglyphs, the grace of simple pottery, all remain carried forward by the flow of time. Let us rest here for a moment, listening to the quiet song of the Nile, reflecting on all that was gained and all that was lost, and carrying forward a gentle wonder for the lives that came before. Night is deep along the Nile. Torches gutter low in doorways, and the river itself seems to rest beneath the scattered stars. It is a quiet time for the people of Egypt, but not an end. Rather, a pause in a much longer journey. History is never a straight line. Even in the Golden Age, change and challenge were constants. Droughts, plagues, war, and shifting powers brought times of fear and scarcity. Pharaohs rose and fell, dynasties faded, whole villages vanished, swallowed by the desert, or moved to greener banks when the river shifted course. Yet life did not end with hardship. Instead, new beginnings emerged again and again, just as the Nile always returned, bringing green to the brown earth after the long dry season. Old gods gave way to new, temples were rebuilt, songs and prayers changed, but the desire for harmony remained. Families adapted, learned, and endured. When famine struck, neighbors gathered to share what little they had. When invaders threatened, walls were rebuilt and alliances forged. Stories of ancestors, their struggles, failures, and victories became a source of wisdom for each new generation. At the heart of Egypt's endurance was unity, a sense of shared purpose and belonging that reached from pharaoh to farmer. Even when the state faltered, the bonds between families and neighbors remained strong. Mena's careful words in the record books, Hori's selfless rush to rescue a child, Tia's choice to act with honesty rather than fear. All were acts of community, weaving an invisible net of trust and resilience. Egyptians believed the soul was judged not by wealth or fame, but by the kindness shown to others. In the afterlife, according to the Book of the Dead, one must declare, "I have not made anyone cry. I have not withheld food from the hungry. I have not caused pain." These ancient ideals echo forward, reminders that gentleness and empathy are as vital as courage. Through feast and famine, peace and turmoil, the people of the Nile endured because they helped one another, sharing burdens, celebrating joys, and mourning losses together. Their unity allowed them to weather every storm. Today, all that physically remains of Egypt's golden age are broken stones and faded images worn by wind and time. Yet the legacy of those who lived by the river endures in unexpected ways, in the stories we tell, the questions we ask, and the ways we care for each other. The pyramids still rise above the desert, mysterious and awe-inspiring. But their true foundation was built from countless small acts, meals shared, stories whispered, hands joined in labor and prayer. The beauty of ancient Egypt is not only in its monuments, but in the hearts of the people who built them day by day through struggle and hope. The Golden Age ended, as all ages must, yet it did not disappear. Its lessons of balance, humility, and human connection echo in every society that came after. Through cycles of loss and renewal, the human spirit endures. The narrator's voice softens, inviting the listener to rest, reminding them that history, like the Nile, flows on, carrying the dreams, sorrows, and joys of those who came before into the future. As you close your eyes tonight, let the gentle sounds of the river guide you. Remember Mena, Hori, Tia, and the millions of unnamed souls who walked these ancient banks. Their world was filled with hardship and hope, darkness and light, just like ours. In their quiet courage and resilience, we find not just the story of Egypt, but the story of all humankind. May you carry their wisdom into your own dawn, gentle and unafraid, ready to shape tomorrow with kindness and wonder. For as long as the river flows, so too does the spirit of those who live beside it, whispering through time, forever enduring.